This is RadioOnFIre.com, giving you more talk, more news, and more music. I go by the name of Diamond K, and I am joined in the studio by a special guest. I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
I am Pam Reaves, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Bad weather today for people not in Baltimore. So I've been having a lot of authors on to talk about themselves, their books, and a little bit of everything. So let's start by where are you from? Where were you born?
I'm a native Baltimorean.
Me too. Me too.
Yes. The youngest of 14 kids.
14.
There are still 11 of us, but I
Okay.
am the youngest. So as I said, I was born and raised in Baltimore. I love Baltimore. I'm proud of Baltimore. I know a lot of times we get a bad rap.
We do.
But I'm a product of the inner city, and I've done fairly well, and there are tons of us who are doing it.
Yes, absolutely. So coming up, were you an avid reader?
I don't think I paid attention until high school, and I don't know what made that shift other than most of my brothers and sisters much older than I. The person that was closest to me was 4 years and 9 months. So I sort of think when everybody was gone, that's when I turned to reading. So I think that's when the shift happened. I can't remember very early, but I do love to read.
So what type of books did you read early?
Well, actually, the romantic novels.
Okay.
But as I aged, my interests became everything. Information. I have this saying, one of my favorite quotes is, the more you know, the more you grow.
Yes.
So now I read some of everything. Yes. Afraid to miss. I'm a curious person, so I think sometimes it's just the fear of missing something, what's going on. So I read some of everything.
Wonderful, wonderful. And during your high school years, were you a writer at that time, or were you just strictly really reading?
I would think more so writing. And I was in such a rush with life. I don't know why. I graduated when I was 16 years old. I didn't do the 11th grade. But in retrospect, when I look back at my awards, most of them were in English, So back then, it just wasn't a raised consciousness. But now in retrospect, I see that I was always like that.
Wow, that's good. So early on, did you feel like you wanted to be a writer, or what was causing you to write?
No, as a matter of fact, I've always had many interests, and I am one of those individuals who pursue all of my interests. I love writing. My careers have been all over the place. They've been wonderful. I wound up, for the last 25 years, I've been in corporate real estate. So my writing is all legal there. And when some of my colleagues have seen my books, they are like surprised, because they're just used to me writing in legalese and arguing and that kind of stuff and negotiating. So to see some of the stuff that I've written, they're really surprised. But, that's just on the job. They don't know me personally.
Right. So you talked about just vast experiences, and obviously that comes together with your writing, the different things that you've seen.
Yes. As I said, that's been my strength, and I probably once again subconsciously honed on the writing skills, because in all honesty, math is my weakness, and besides my money, I can't count.
Let me get you to come closer to me.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about your first book.
Okay.
How did that come about?
Well, the seed for that first book was planted more than 35 years ago.
Wow.
I was with another friend who was close to my age, and we were having a conversation with an older woman. And my friend was in this tumultuous relationship. I mean, it was just all over the place. And I think the older woman was trying to comfort her and make her feel like she wasn't by herself. So she was talking about her relationship, everything that was going on once again. And the older woman said, well, sooner or later, all of us have one of those sick attachments in our lives, talking about toxic relationships. And I don't think that stuck with her, my friend, but it stuck with me. And all of a sudden, I felt that now I have a name for all of the toxic relationships that I saw growing up in the inner city, questioning why people didn't leave relationships like that when all hell had broken loose, and how could they still say it's love. So my first book is entitled, Is It Love or Merely a Sick Attachment?
Oh, my.
Yeah.
And so this is based on just what is this based on personal experience?
On my personal experiences, the relationships that I saw growing up, as I said, in the inner city, you know the horrible stories
Sure.
that we hear, and you wonder why people stay in relationships. Just hearing conversations in my career, in my travels, and I got to the point when I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to write about that, because friends used to say to me whenever we were discussing things, what do you call that thing when you talk about bad relationships? And I would say it's a sick attachment, you know. So I decided to, you know, just compile all of that stuff in a writing. And so Is It Love or Merely a Sick Attachment is an exploration of healthy, loving relationships versus those toxic relationships, but not just toxic relationships, but those that are veiled as loving. Because that's what I've found. As long as people call it love, as long as they think it's love, no matter what's going on, they try to stay with it. So I pose that question to my readers: is it love, or is it just merely a sick attachment?
I've had love a few times. I've had a few sick attachments. I think that the difficult part is telling, like you were saying, the healthy relationship is still going to have ups and downs.
Yes.
So how do you know when that down is toxic and when it's just a normal up and down of a healthy relationship?
When it starts to really hurt you. You know, when it
physically
starts to
or
hurt,
emotionally or either?
Either one.
Okay.
When you start to be diminished, when you don't want to live, when you don't feel good about yourself, when you are willing to do anything for that other person at your peril, then something's wrong with that. You know, and not all bad relationships are sick attachments. It's just that I've put this out there for people to be aware, because it can be a slippery slope. You know, some people see it right away and they don't wait for it to become a sick attachment.
Right.
This isn't what I want. This isn't good for me. I don't feel good about this, so I'm going to walk off. Other people, for a number of reasons, and I talk about those in the book, they just can't detach. It could be from upbringing. Maybe you saw toxic relationships, and your parents kept calling it love when all you saw them was fighting and slapping each other around. So then guess what? That becomes your definition of love. You think you may not like it, but you accept it.
That's powerful. That's powerful. What type of response did this book get?
It was great. And what was interesting, men were they raised eyebrows and were interested.
And that's where I was getting ready to go.
Yeah, and what I found out in some other radio interviews and conversations, that men are willing to call it out before women. They would say it's a sick attachment, where a woman may not want to. And that's probably because men think so rational and women think with the heart. And we don't want to think that we're in something that's called that. But men will, like I said, it's been my experience that men will call it out. I was on a radio show, and when people started to call in, just looking up at the message board that lists the callers, you know, it was what's the purpose of your call? Every man said sick attachment. The women would say different things, you know, like I want to talk about marriage. But the men, I had to laugh when I looked up. Every man, they went straight to the point, sick attachment. Yeah,
I mean, now whether we can act on it might be something different, but we can
call it out. Call it
out.
Especially when she's running after you, that sick attachment chasing you down. You're going to call her out quick.
Right.
And the other good thing that came out of this, I had a pastor from Kenya who is a Facebook friend, and he asked me about the book. And I was apprehensive to tell him initially what it was about, because I thought something would be lost in the translation.
Yeah.
And he said, when I explained it to him, he said, as a matter of fact, I teach about toxic relationships.
Wow.
So I sent the book, and he uses the book as a teaching tool, because there are a lot of women in Kenya who are in toxic relationships, and mainly that's because he says because of they're not independent. So he's created, it's called Ray of Hope Kenya, and what they do, they basically train women about, relationships, but also about starting businesses, because they believe that there is a correlation between being dependent and accepting toxic relationships where you're abused.
Yeah, I definitely can see how that could happen. Wow. So I know that had to be fulfilling.
Yes,
to have that type of impact.
Yeah. Initially, I felt just when he said, well, you can tell your readers that the book has arrived in Africa, it was like, okay, maybe that's one of those full circle experiences. I felt really good about that. But as he shared stories with me about things, it was just horrific, people running away for their lives, women. And so that's why he started, as he says, Ray of Hope Kenya was birthed out of, is it love or merely a sick attachment?
That is amazing.
Yes.
So let's talk about some of your other writing.
Okay, so I just released my second book.
Okay.
Totally different. I do not want to be pigeonholed into just writing one type of book. And my newest book is a fictional novel based on real life events. That's called Loving Scott Harrington, Bound by Dark and Dangerous Affections. Okay. Scott Harrington is a charismatic slave who grows up on the Seymour plantation. His life is complicated because James Seymour is not only his master, but James Seymour is his biological father. Scott Harrington becomes a free man at the age of 17, but the book is basically about that phraseology, emancipated but not free, because he struggles with his love-hate relationship with James Seymour, and he lives his life struggling and battling with the slave free man mentality. He's married 3 times throughout his lifetime, and all of his wives are demanded to call him Mr. Harrington. They can never refer to him as Scott Harrington. His children, they are forced to wait on him in ways, unspeakable ways. They have to bring him his lunch at his job rather than eat lunch themselves. They do the labor, a lot of the labor, just as he saw laborers on the plantation.
Amazing.
So he wants to get away from that, but he struggles with that. He automatically, because slavery is his point of reference. So he keeps defaulting.
His only point of reference, really.
Yes,
yeah.
And he keeps defaulting back to that. He's charismatic. The one stronghold that he has is he's so handsome. He's so beguiling. So women are not his problem. He can reel them in. And he has one particular woman, Belle, who remains in his life throughout his 3 marriages. She refuses to let him go, and she does everything trying to make him hers, including resorting to witchcraft and plotting murder.
Wow. So I was a history major, so this story is very intriguing to me. Where and what time period does it take place?
The book starts the day Scott Harrington finds out that he's a free man, which is about 6 months after January 1st, 1863, when the emancipation. So because in North Carolina, my research tried to make it, just great, authentic. It took a while, and that was one of the states where it took them a little while before they found out that they were free. So the book starts. He's in a compromising position with a woman, and he hears all of this noise outside, this commotion, people yelling and screaming. He's down in the woods in a shed, and he wonders what that's about. He stops, and then basically tell her, don't pay them no mind. Let's go back to what we finished. Yeah. Some fool is crying about freedom. We all wish that was true, but let's just go back to what we were doing. And then Scott Harrington's brother finally burst in and tell him that they have been set free, and they got to go up to Master Seymour's house to find out what all that's about. And he just leaves this woman who's really upset because she's down there making love with Scott Harrington, calling him Massa and everything else he wants. And this woman is Master Seymour's niece.
Oh my. Oh my. So this is
it's a sizzling novel.
This is definitely interesting.
Yes.
When you're speaking about it, I'm visualizing what you're saying. I see a movie here. This is good.
I hope so.
This is good. This is good.
Yes.
So we have a Civil War era story, and it spans how long?
93 years, up until after the Great, into 1939, when he passes away at the age of 93.
Yeah, so
and when
right
he
to World
passes
War
away,
okay.
he still has a relationship with the family who owned him.
Wow.
Yes.
So this is amazing. I really want to read this book.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I really want to read this book. So the motivation for this, where did the motivation come from? This is an amazing story.
It is. My mother, Novella Harrington Reeves, was born in 1912. And when in 1912, Scott Harrington, the real Scott Harrington, was 63 years old. He is her father.
Okay.
That's
this is a very personal story.
Yeah. That's why I was able to have so much information. I didn't think I had enough information for it to be nonfiction, but when I finished, I still love the fictional part, but at the end of this, there's a section that's entitled "What Really Happened," and you will be amazed at what really happened versus the fictional.
And this is at the end,
yes,
obviously.
Yes.
Did you get a chance to meet him?
No, he passed away in 1939 at
Okay.
the age of 93.
So that part
Yes.
is actual.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. And what had happened was, when growing up, she would share the stories with us. And to be honest, I always thought of slaves as docile and no control over anything, just the victim.
Yeah.
But the story she shared with us, and growing up with he as her father, I grew to hate his memory. And late in life, we were having a conversation, and I said, you know what, because she was just the sweetest person, and I couldn't imagine a man so cold and distant and the things that they were forced to do. And I said to her, I hate his memory. I'm glad I didn't meet him or didn't know him. And her response is what got me with this book. It shocked me. Her response was, but I loved him.
So she was not angry with you for saying that?
No, she wasn't angry. I felt horrible because I love my parents so much, and I know how I would have felt. And at that point, that light went on. She was never sharing with us for us to hate him. She was just telling us how it was. For instance, she was the youngest, and my mother was the person at 12 noon every day, recess, when the bell rang, her teacher would tell her, run out, Novella, go home. And Novella went home to get his lunch pail to run it down to the mill where he worked. And to me, that was horrible. And I used to say to my older siblings, well, when did she eat? And they said she didn't eat. But that was the requirement, that she took his lunch to him.
It's interesting. And that was your mother that had to do that?
That was my mother, yeah. And a lot of what's in the book is based on what was told to me. Even, the dark and dangerous affections, the practices of roots and what people did, in their desperation to get other people.
Yeah.
Those practices are real in the South, in some states in the South.
That's true. So it's amazing that when your mother told you a lot of the things that she told you, that you had such sharp contrast of affection or feelings for the same person.
Yes.
With the same story.
Yes.
But, she obviously was completely, just having a completely different feeling about it than you did.
Yeah. And, even among my siblings and I, we all have different feelings, because I've had a sibling who said her mother died when she was 9. And my sister said she had to love him. That's all she had as a parent. She had to.
Right.
And the good thing about that is that we were blessed with a totally different upbringing. So people don't have to pass that on just because of your upbringing. My mother and my father were totally different, and I think that's why it was just so horrible to me, because and we were poor in the city, but the love and affection, just the wealth of that, in contrast to what she was saying to me, you know, what they were required to do as children for this man. You know, and everybody just spoke of how handsome he was, you know, just absolutely delicious, you know. But that was probably a lot of the attraction and why this woman stayed through 3 marriages, and why he was able to marry 3 Christian women, you know. And you would think, okay, with that faith, that they would stay away from a man like that. And that's why in my narrative, I actually describe some of the stories that he wielded strange power over the tiny town of Gulf, North Carolina.
That is amazing. And again, the book is called
Loving Scott Harrington, Bound by Dark and Dangerous Affections.
And so women not only loved him, but his children loved him as well.
Yes.
Any boys? Did he have any boys?
Yes, he had. As a matter of fact, my mother's mother was married twice, and so was Scott Harrington. So it was a blended family. So there were 2 sons, and so the kids, all of the characters are based off of the real characters in this book. And so it's really, you will never ever guess the ending of this book. You will be totally blown away by what happens in the end.
Yeah, definitely. So isn't it wonderful how books can just hold you in?
Yeah, because as an author, and I don't know if other authors are like this because we're all different, but when I'm writing, people ask me about writing. Of course, I do it on the computer, and really it's just like looking at TV.
Yeah.
For me, I see everything while I'm writing. It is just like looking at television for me. And so I just love that. And I love this book because so many people are telling me how they hate the characters. And when they hate them, you know it's good.
Yeah, because you get that reaction.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I love about Scott Harrington, he's an unorthodox leading man. You know, he does not just wield power over African Americans in this book. His Caucasian counterparts, they are enamored by him. You know, that's why at the beginning of the book he was with Master Seymour's niece, and she was down in the woods calling him Massa.
So he's got a little Jack Johnson thing going on.
Yeah.
He's has the white women on him as well.
Right.
This is amazing. So I'm sure that he had some challenges from some angry white people.
Well, in the book, though, they are really intimidated by him. Scott Harrington is 6 feet 5 inches tall.
Okay,
he's a very
this could be challenging.
He's a very nice-looking man, and because he thinks, and this is his struggle, he is Master Seymour's slave, but Scott Harrington is arrogant because he knows he's Master Seymour's son. So that is part of what's interesting about this story, because even after freedom, people say, well, he was a slave. Why is he so arrogant? Scott Harrington is not always nice, and most of the time he isn't nice. But he is charismatic, and just when you start to hate him, there are things in this book he will do for his family that will make you step back and say, no, he is capable of love. He does love them. He is not, the man that everybody thinks he is. But that's most of us. We're complex. We're not one-dimensional. And you will love him and you will hate him.
Definitely. And that's probably some of the sides that your mother knew as well.
Yes.
Whereas though, you didn't have the firsthand experience of it, and so it's difficult for you to see it. Was he complexion-wise? What the actual person? What was his complexion like?
Probably a few shades lighter than myself.
Okay.
He had gray eyes, all white hair, just a very, very unusual looking man and very, very handsome. My oldest sister, who is 85 now, she did know Scott Harrington. She was 9 years old when he passed away. And she talked about him being very erect and proud and extremely tall and never bending even in his 90s, you know. And Scott Harrington, when he passed away, he was still working.
Something else.
Yes.
That is something else.
Yes, he is a very dynamic man.
Yeah, that is excellent. How can people get either of your books?
Okay, well, Loving Scott Harrington is available on my website, www.pamreaves.com. You can order it from Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. Is it love or merely a sick attachment? Both ways. www.pamreaves.com, at Amazon.com, or at BarnesandNoble.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. As far as social media, are you on social media?
Yes, I am. You can follow me Facebook at Pamela Reaves. Try and send me a request because I'm at that 5,000 mark. But I tell you, Facebook can be crazy, so I do. Sometimes I purge. Sometimes I purge. Yes, and I'm on. And you can follow me also Twitter, and that is Pamela_Reaves, Reaves.
Wonderful, wonderful. On Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, I'm at The Diamond K Show. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
I enjoyed my conversation with you as well.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to say before we go?
Just see me I will be at the African Americans Authors Expo on August the 15th at the Radisson out in Timonium. You have got to come there. It's just like talking books all over the place. So I would just encourage your listeners and your viewers to come and visit me there, as well as all of the other amazing authors that will be there. And then just look out for me and follow me on social media, because in February every year I give a gala called the Power of Love Gala.
Wonderful, wonderful. So definitely they can come to the authors, African American Authors
Expo.
Yes. Get a signed copy of the book.
Yes,
right?
I'll be waiting for you.
All right, definitely. Stay connected with Radio on Fire on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Radio on Fire for your chance to win prizes and surprises. Okay, thanks for listening and watching. I will see you guys next time.